Hey, what's going on? Ryan Kohler here, and I wanted to put together a quick video to show you this new concept in onboarding, to show you that how you need to go about onboarding new employees in the first 90 days, not just to capture their new hire paperwork and check the box on compliance, and not just to teach them, how to do their job, the specific task, but actually how to onboard a new employee to become a shooting star, whatever you want to call them, a rock star in the first 90 days. We think that hiring will solve our problem. When somebody quits, when we have a new position, a new opportunity, or we fire somebody, we end up with an empty seat. It causes a whole lot of stress and burden on the rest of our team, on the managers, etc. And so, we assume if we can rush and hurry and just hire somebody, get them in the seat, that the pain will start going away. And then we get somebody in that seat and they aren't that much help. In fact, the average employee who was doing the job before to pick up the slack generally reports that they wish that, they hadn't hired anybody at all, that it would have been faster to do it themselves. Now, clearly, that concept of a brand new employee not being ready to go on day one is just a fact of life. It just is what it is. We're never going to have employees that are great on the first day. And those first 30 days are going to be a lot of work training and mentoring and then getting them going. The challenge is when after those first 30, 60, 90 days, we still end up with an employee who can only do exactly what they're told, who can't think outside the box, who can't make decisions, come up with ideas, problem solve, etc., because they just don't have the context that the rest of the team has or that the manager has. And that right there is a good example of what I believe is a checking the box on onboarding, but really holding the organization back. If you think about kind of the process of what it takes to go from new hire to rising star, yes, they need to learn their role. They need to learn how to take orders and what's on our menu and whatever the case may be. But they also need to be able to start down these next steps of recognizing when they're about ready to make an error and knowing what to do when they do make an error, how to go back and fix it, or knowing how and when to escalate to somebody else, who to escalate to, what to bring them, how to bring the situation to them, and how to make sure that that doesn't drop the ball. And then finally, they need to know how to expand their ability to do more and more stuff so they start becoming a truly productive worker, but also that they start becoming a rising star in our organization. If you think about it, there's a couple different ways to understand why most new hires struggle with this. We start down in the yellow box. They start with they were trained on tasks that they were told exactly how to do them. And this is the great starting point on day one, on week 2. But as we start to progress, we're hoping that they start going from having to be told everything they need to do into being able to decide what to do. And we're hoping that they go from just performing tasks that they've been trained step by step on over to actually solving things that are going on, solving customer problems, solving, work problems, solving, handoff problems, whatever the case may be. We're hoping they progress from the yellow to the green, right? That is our goal. The number one reason why employees struggle with this, though, is that they were trained over here on the right in this funnel. They were trained on the what to do right now, but not given the context about it, not explain what it is that we do as a company, what our industry is about, why we do the things we do in the way we do them, what our culture's like, what our core values are like, what it is, the mission, our vision for the future, how we differentiate ourselves from our competitors, what our customers are expecting when they come in, what happens with that customer happens in that process, whatever the case may be, before it gets to them and what happens afterwards. Quite simply, they lack context. They can see just zoomed in on what it is they were taught to do, but they lack the overall vision of everything else going on around them, whether it's going on with customers, with prospects, whether it's going on with other teams and other departments. Quite simply, they lack the context of somebody who's been with us a long time. But that's normally not something that most organizations have a concerted educational effort for. And so when we start talking about how do we go about solving this problem, it's not just about finding an LMS. It's not just about finding a learning management system or a piece of software. Keep in mind, those software pieces are just going to scale or amplify our strategy and our content that we're using. And so if at this point you're like, hey, this makes sense, Ryan, we should be doing that same thing. We should be going onboarding beyond it. We can't just leave it to the manager, because the manager, once again, is zoomed in on the now, right? They're zoomed in on this one task of getting this done. Number two, this also needs to be something more strategic that crosses departments, because what is our industry and what is our customer and what are their pains and why do we do things the way that we do them? What is our business model or our differentiator or our competitive advantage? And how do we do things from a value standpoint and a concept standpoint? How do we do things outside of our department and more holistically along our processes? That information is not generally role specific, and somebody needs to take lead on that. Specifically talking about what is our strategy and outlining the type of content we'll need, and then how are we going to then scale that so it becomes something that happens automatically. In the meantime, it's just frustration, right? And nobody understands why. Hey, we taught them what to do, but they don't remember it. Can also be a problem of we taught them what to do, but not enough times, and they didn't have the context to understand why we were teaching them that. So we put together kind of a 3-step process on this of how to go about helping your employees make great decisions, how to go about helping them understand the greater context of what's going on in your organization. It's coming up with and explaining the story behind what's going on, having them understand the strategy of how your organization approaches it, and then finally having them understand the systems that are involved. Each of these has kind of 3 main steps. Number one, that an individual needs to understand your industry, your customer, and your company. The company being, where do we fit in this world of this industry? How do we differentiate ourselves? How do we compete in this space? What is it that we're offering? Now, in the strategy, this is where we get down to the nuts and bolts of, this is our mission, our vision, our area. This is how your role fits into it. The overall concept of educating them on the story was more external about the industry, the customer, and our company. The strategy is more internal. How do we approach things? And then the final one is the system, the actual nuts and bolts. What is the power behind our delivering or executing on our strategy? The processes we follow, the software we use, the results of how we track when we're winning and losing, our scoreboards, all of this type of information. You might think, hey, we hire entry-level people. This is too much information for them. That's why you spread it out. This isn't to be dumped on them on day one. While you might think about covering some of this lightly in an orientation session, if you do, you're missing the point that it takes the human brain like 7 times to be able to remember something. And more importantly, context. What they hear on day one, they lack context of your organization. As they hear it, as you go through, into 90 days, they will have been able to hear it again and apply it to the things they've seen. So how do you go about actually doing this in a way that leverages your time? Quite simply, you start by interviewing your team. Instead of sitting down and trying to write from scratch, you start here on the top left. You make a map. I'm hoping they go from here to here using that diagram that we provided with the 3 steps in the triangle. You then interview your team. I'm going to show you the interview questions to use. I suggest you use Zoom to do the interview, record it, interview your executive team, the manager, whoever you need to interview to gather this knowledge together. Interviewing is much faster than typing it out. Then use Otter to transcribe those Zoom recordings into text. When we have them as text, we can now use ChatGPT to clean them up, to summarize them, to turn them into emails that we can send out, to turn them into articles that people can read, to turn them into blog post or video talk tracks. 11 Labs is a great tool that can actually take and turn that text into voice, whether we're deep faking our own executive team's voice or using an out-of-the-box voice or even using a funny, pop culture voice. Podcasts are actually the more consumable means for this information than, say, video. They're easier for us to make, but also your employees can listen to them on their drive to work, when they're out going for a walk, whatever the case may be. They don't need to be sitting in front of their computer to consume this content. Podbean is one of our featured providers that provides a private podcast. What that means is that this information that you're teaching your team, you don't want to put it on a public podcast. You want to put it somewhere that they need to get approved in order to actually get access to it. And the last one is SendFox. SendFox is a drip email sequencing tool where you can take and build those sequences so that as you hire a new person, you can sign them up or they can go and self-register for this 90-day drip sequence. This right here is a super powerful way to take all of that information, all of that knowledge that you need to help your team understand. We'll start and show you just some of the interview questions. This is how we gather our industry story interview. I would pull this from our executive team, from our sales team, anybody who's out there in the industry, your marketing team potentially. We'll provide our product team. We'll provide great insights into this information. Number two is our origin story of the company, our culture, our values, our mission and vision, our business model, right? The managers, the different departments, what they do, how they interact. All of this information we can quickly buzz through in an hour-long interview and gather it together to feed it into ChatGPT. Next up, our customer story, your customer support, your customer success team, your customer service people, your sales people are going to be a great resource for information on your customer story. Why is it that your customers come to you? Why do they work with you? What are they expecting from what you provide? How do we deliver it? What does success look like? And then finally, the actual job story. This is more at the role and the team level of how do we define success? How do we define their responsibilities? How do we talk through this more than a boring job description? What does a day in the life look like? How do we measure success? What are their KPIs, et cetera, et cetera? How do they get access to stuff? And what is the future directions of where they go when they're successful? How they can expand and grow, et cetera. We take all of this, we record the team, we transcribe it to text, outline and write it, create engaging audio, host a private podcast, and then create a drip sequence that sends out one a day or every other day via email, pushing them to go listen to a short podcast or to read a blog post or to read an article or watch a YouTube video about our industry. All of those things create this very cohesive strategy at 5 minutes to 10 minutes of time per day for the employees to get up to speed and become phenomenal. I would actually take and point the same exact concept flow at your current employees. Ask them for their feedback. That's the best way to both level up your team, get a consistent clarity around what you do so everybody's on the same page, but also ask for feedback. And so if I build a system like this, I point at my employees first, let them know what we're doing, drip them out for 90 days and ask for their feedback so I can adjust it. And then I can now run it with my new hires from that point forward. If you work with any of my companies, we have the ability to integrate these different product platforms into our platforms. But even if you don't, these are very simple platforms to run and to set up so that they run in sequence, whether that's initiating from your applicant tracking system, initiating from your onboarding platform, or even downloading a list of your employees and importing it into SendFox that will trigger them to go to Podbean and trigger everything from there. If you would like to learn more about how we suggest and how we can help you activate your new talent and get them to be rock stars and superstars in your organization, feel free to let me know. Hit us up. We'd love to schedule a 60-minute strategy session. We'll look at your current jobs, look at your current onboarding process, and talk you through exactly step-by-step and create a plan of attack for how to massively level up your team's ability to be great, to be cohesive, to work together, to have clarity, not just your existing team, but also getting those new hires to the point of being rock stars in 90 days. Please feel free to let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, we'll talk to you soon.